Hey comic lovers, EMoney and the old man back with you again. We got a brand new video for you this week. We are going to be reviewing some of the issues that have come out this week, give you our opinions on them. But before we do, we want to ask you to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, turn on your notifications, and if you like, leave us a comment. We like to hear from you guys, and we want to hear your opinions on these issues. All right? So what do you say we get into it? So, oh man, what came out this week?
Well, first off, let's set this up a little bit. This is our first time doing a review.
No, what came out this week, right now?
Shut up. Kind of scared me a little bit. Thought I was sitting next to that damn dog. Any rate, so how this got started is a month or so ago, friend of the channel, longtime friend of mine, Jody Hickerson, asked me, was I going to read the Future State comics that DC was going to put out, and how would I feel about reviewing them? Well, I flat out said, no, that's too expensive. EMoney and I went a long time without buying any new comics. We've been out of the game for a while when it comes to new comics. We buy collections and then read the stuff that we want to read. And lately we started buying a few new comics, just select stuff. But I thought about it. I told him, it's too expensive, not going to do it. But then it got stuck in my craw. And I started dwelling on it. And the next thing I know, I'm in the comic book world buying way too many comic books. Spent a small fortune this week because 6 issues of Future State came out and a handful of other books that we picked up. Jody, I told you in the last issue of Back Issues you owed me money. I meant it. I expect to see a check any day now. Because if not, we may have to start one of those, what's it called? Patreon channels to have y'all donate money so we can afford to buy comic books. Because that's expensive. Typical comic book was 12 cents when I started. Now it's typical, just run-of-the-mill comic book, $4. 4. And a couple of them were much higher than that. But anyway.
All right, so.
No, I'm not done.
Oh, okay.
I got to rant some more. Since EMoney and I have not been reading comic books, there's a lot of stuff we're behind on. Like a lot of the Future State stuff comes right after the Death Metal storyline. How many issues of Death Metal did you read? Same here. So it was a struggle to get into some of this stuff because we're totally lost, and I'll go into that later. We talked about spoilers. Yeah, we can just tell you what the whole comic book is about, but we're not going to do that. Now, if we let something slip, it's not intentional, and I know how much I hate it when somebody spoils something for me. But we'll try not to do that.
All right, so.
I'm still not done.
I want to talk about comics. That's what we're here for.
We're going to get there.
Jeez.
But I also need to explain how I feel about artwork, okay? I don't buy any comic books because of the wonderful artwork. If it doesn't have a good story, to me, it's not worth having. I want the artwork to help tell the story, not distract from the story. Sure, if I happen to pick up a comic book, it's got a great story and Jim Lee drew it, bonus. But I didn't buy it because Jim Lee drew it. It might have gotten my attention, but if the story sucks, the comic sucks. It's not worth having. So, when we talk about artwork, we're going to talk about, did it tell the story? We're not going to probably rave on any of it. But, now you want to talk comics?
Okay, so the #1 issues, a lot of them for Future State came out this week, which is
6 of them.
Yeah, so we're gonna start with those. So the first Future State issue was
The Next Batman.
The Next Batman. So this has 3 stories in it, and the first one is about a futuristic Batman, not Batman Beyond futuristic, but I would say a couple years, maybe a decade or two into the future, where Gotham has become a police state, and Batman is still fighting the good fight, but he's not Bruce Wayne. That's not a spoiler because it's obvious by the title, The Next Batman. and we don't know who it is. So, I mean, I could guess, Dick Grayson, maybe Damian Wayne, all grown up, but we don't know who it is. And, you talked about artwork. And the first story, I had like 3 levels. There's the, superb, oh my God, artwork, like Alex Ross or Jim Lee. And, then there's the adequate artwork, which is where
tells the story. It doesn't distract from the story.
This is where most artists fall under. And then there's the ones where I open up the issue and I'm like, ugh.
It distracts from the
and
story.
I can't enjoy the story because it's so awful. This one in the first story, I would say it falls into that middle category, maybe slightly above it.
So you're going to say it's adequate plus.
Yes. So I would say that's a pretty good grade for any artist, but pretty good here. The story also not bad. This kind of plays on the way Bruce Wayne was as we knew him, where he would often take pity on troubled youths, and it's kind of where this story goes from. And that's pretty much all I'll say about that story without giving too much away. So then you have the second story, which is a Katana story.
Katana or The Outsiders.
Right. If you saw, Suicide Squad, you're probably familiar with Katana. And the artwork, I would say, was adequate minus. So...
I thought it was adequate.
Okay.
That's fine.
Good enough. So the story itself was meh.
I mean, I've never thought Katana was that interesting. The coolest thing about Katana is she believes her husband's soul is in the sword, and she talks to him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, she's a martial artist.
Yeah.
She should be working fighting the hand with Daredevil in a different company,
Mm-hmm. So then you have the third story, which is about the Arkham Knight. And this is, sort of similar to what the first story covers, in that Gotham is a police state. And you have a real motley crew of rebels who are looking to, disrupt things. And you find... One thing about these stories I don't like, you're introduced to a new character and you don't know who's under the mask. So then, like, later on, you see who was under the mask, and so you're wanting to go back to the story, and you're like, oh, wait, what was he saying earlier? What did he mean by that? Okay, now that makes sense. So, a little frustrating about that, but I guess the writers intended it that way.
Well, I have a little bit different opinion on that story. I thought the Arkham Knight story was probably the best story in that book. I enjoyed the mixture of characters they threw at us, and the artwork was adequate plus.
It's sort of a little commentary, I guess, on, when circumstances change, you see it changes who the heroes are. So, pretty good story there. So, good issue overall, just has a weak middle point.
Well, we went with the Oliver Coipel variant. It's on cardboard stock, and it was $8.99. All right, next.
We have the Future State Flash issue.
Well, here's one that, like I said, we didn't read Death Metal. So open up the first page, and I'm confused out the gate. I have no idea what's going on. It looks like Wally West has gone evil, and all the other speedsters have lost their powers. They're using artifacts from different rogues gallery guys that they've fought over the years to go after Wally. What the hell? So I tried to jump in as best I could. The story was okay. Nothing that I can't wait to read the next one. I might, but the cover's by Brandon Peterson. It's $3.99. Adequate artwork.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next we have Future State, Harley Quinn.
And, Harley's always a wild card, if you'll pardon the pun, because She's not your average superhero story at any given time, so you never know what you're going to get with her.
Well, what we got was a variant cover by Gary Frank and Brad Anderson on cardboard stock for $4.99. And as soon as I opened up, I knew I was in trouble because I did not care for the artwork.
I mean, it kind of looks like it's screenshots from an anime movie with Harley Quinn in it.
And the story, I mean, I'm reading the New 52 Harley Quinn recently, and it's nothing like that. It's not even, it doesn't even feel like it's the same Harley Quinn. But, not a favorite. Now we have Future State, Superman and Metropolis. This one was a variant cover by Inyak Lee. Sorry, I know I mispronounced that. Cardboard stock and $6.99. It also has 3 individual stories.
Yep. The first story is Superman, and it's a new Superman. This is not Clark Kent, but Jonathan Kent, Clark's son. And
Not much of a spoiler, you find that out quick.
Yeah. And it follows him in a future metropolis where it's similar to what Gotham is in Batman. It's sort of become a police state. And
no, it's totally different than the police state in Gotham. It's
okay,
totally different in my opinion.
different circumstances, yeah.
Huge, crazy different circumstances.
And not only is the new Superman at odds with the authorities, but he's also at odds with his cousin, once removed, Kara, a.k.a. Supergirl. And she doesn't like some of his choices regarding what he's been doing in Gotham. So I don't want to spoil too much, but there's that problem. So without spoiling the first story, you go into the next one. You have Mr. Miracle, and you're a big fan of Mr. Miracle.
Well, the fact that Jack Kirby saw one of my favorite artists, Jim Steranko, performing an escape artist routine on stage, and the fact that he took that idea and created Mr. Miracle, that's always made the character special to me. So it was a shame to see this story because it's not the same Mr. Miracle.
This is not Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle.
The art's terrible.
Mm-hmm. And I've not been as big a fan as Mr. Miracle. I think he is a cool novelty and someone else's story. I don't think he's strong enough to carry a story himself.
He didn't carry this story.
Yeah, so again, a weak middle story. So then you have the next story, which follows The Guardian and Jimmy Olsen, which is a little ironic because in Supergirl they're both the same character. But this one, I gave my characterizations for artwork. This one, bordering on adequate to adequate minus, probably.
Yeah, we disagree a little bit. I thought it was fine.
Maybe I've been spoiled by Jim Lee too much. But this one, artwork is okay. Story, I can't say I'm really a big fan of this Guardian. The last time I was really in any way into Guardian was during the pre and post Death of Superman era in the 90s.
Well, that was back when the Guardian was working with Cadmus, wasn't it?
Right.
Okay, I remember that. All right, so Superman's story to me was pretty good, but the other two, whether it was the art or the story, were not something I look forward to. All right, next we have Future State Swamp Thing. Now, this is a cover by Mike Perkins and June Chung, $3.99. EMoney and I have actually never been huge Swamp Thing fans.
Mm-mm.
Early Swamp Thing I enjoyed. Then when it became all about the green, and it kind of went off in a different direction. I just didn't care for it that much.
I mean, and to me, he's a lot like Mr. Miracle in that he's a cool novelty in someone else's story, but don't think he can carry one himself.
Well,
Which is why I was so perplexed when he got his own show.
didn't last. But anyway,
Big surprise.
I actually thought this particular story was better than some I've read, but the artwork was very nice. I'd adequate plus.
Okay.
I thought it was definitely worth a look. If you do buy comics for the artwork, at least flip through this one and see what you think. All right, so the last Future State book we have to talk about is Wonder Woman. Now, all of these comics, all the Future State comics, are going to come with a Wonder Woman 1984 variant. This is the only one that I chose that variant for. It's Wonder Woman, so why not? And this cover is by Adam Hughes, cardboard stock, $4.99. Wonder Woman has been real iffy for me over the years. I mean, the George Perez series that he started up was beautiful to look at, but I thought the story was boring. I just didn't care for it. Some of the older stuff from the mid to late 70s wasn't anything to look at, but I thought the stories were more interesting. So I picked this thing up, and first off, it's not Wonder Woman.
Oh.
Not Diana. She's doing things. I'm used to seeing Wonder Woman running around with the Justice League. She's on the part of the Earth where there's other people. I'm not even sure where she is in this. It's like a fantasy setting, which was good.
So
I enjoyed that.
this is similar to the Thor of Asgard stories that we've enjoyed.
Yeah, it's crosses over to a different realm.
Yeah, not Thor the Avenger, Thor the God. So
I mean, she's hanging out with a Pegasus, who she has a strange love-hate relationship with. I thought that was kind of interesting how they. I mean, Pegasus doesn't talk, but he definitely lets her know. He basically lets her know how he feels. But yeah, I thought this might actually have been the best of this week's Future State comics.
Okay.
All right, so
that does it for the Future State stuff.
all right, that's it for Future State.
So now we move on to some of the other stuff that came out this week. So first up,
we're going to stick with DC. It's the last
All right.
DC book we got this week. This was Generation Shattered #1.
all right?
Now, this was a Oliver Coipel cover on cardboard stock for a whopping $8.99. Well,
I mean, it's almost a trade. I mean,
yeah,
pretty big.
to me, of the money I spent on all the comics, that one was the one that I didn't feel as bad about paying that much, because
Right.
there's a lot of stuff there. And this is one of those comics where it's drawn by, I don't know, 50 different guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole inside front cover shows all the different guys who worked on the comic, and it was legion.
Well, when you get into the story, you kind of get it because it says Generations Shattered. And for me, this comic was pretty much the cream of the crop for this week because it's almost a crisis. It didn't say crisis, but it feels that way.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could see this being almost in line with George Perez's Crisis on Infinite Earths. Almost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not knowing what they're going to do with the future story, but this particular issue was worth a read.
Yeah. So, in the story, you have a guy who has been a relatively unknown character in recent years, who is, odd man out to assemble a group of heroes. This guy right here, probably might know who he is.
I know he is.
Who has been through, circumstances thrown at him. He is tasked with assembling a group of heroes to avert a crisis, for lack of a better word, as time is being erased. So he sets out to recruit these heroes, and he doesn't get all of the heroes that he set out to get. He ends up, he's supposed to grab one guy out of the time stream, and he ends up getting the guy who was standing next to him. So, oops. Okay, we'll have to make do with what we have here. And if you see the cover, he assembles such a strange group of people. You have, I'm not spoiling anything because it's on the cover. For one, you have Steel from the reign of the Superman era, after the death of Superman, and he like right in the middle, like he's fighting cyborg Superman in the streets of Metropolis, and he just snatches him up, grabs him, and they're in the time stream together.
And you've got this guy, Sinestro. Sinestro before he was a true villain. So it's definitely an interesting mix. It reminds me of when I picked up the first copy of the Marvel feature, I think, that had the Defenders, first appearance of the Defenders, where you had Hulk, Namor, and Doctor Strange. I mean, same type of mix-up. How are these guys going to work together?
Yeah, I mean, and what's interesting is it's not just a motley crew of heroes, it's a motley crew of different versions of heroes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, maybe, not in their prime or maybe past their prime or something like that.
Remember, time travel.
And, you've got Steel, you've got Starfire, Sinestro, Booster Gold, and, this version of Batman, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but he recruits a Batman that I was not expecting.
Nope.
So, the timeline and going through different eras to recruit these guys, I mean, it makes for a great story, and I'm eager to see the next issue here.
Me too. All right. Next, one of two Marvel comics we got. This is Eternals #1. This comic had more variant covers than any comic book I've ever seen. I'm not even sure Comic Book World got them all. But if you flip to the inside back cover, next page, yeah, 2 whole pages of covers. And that's not all of them. The Alex Ross cover that we picked up isn't even on here.
It's getting out of control, publishers.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Come on. Variant should be a cover, a variant, and then maybe some incentive comic where the shop had to buy 50 copies of a book to get the one variation, which makes it rare and maybe desirable depending on who drew it. But as soon as I saw the Alex Ross cover, I just kind of picked it up and said I don't have to worry about all these other covers because as I glanced through them, that's my man.
All right, so story-wise, the artwork actually in the comic book, I label it as adequate.
Yeah.
Yeah. The actual story itself,
Well, I think part of that's because we're not real familiar with the Eternals.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who most of these people are, and, I was having trouble getting into them. There was one character who was, just flamboyant enough that he kept my attention, or was it he or she? That character kept my attention, obviously not to know.
Little.
Yes.
She.
Okay, she.
But I actually thought they set up the main 2 characters in this comic. I thought they set it up pretty well. I mean, they got my attention, and their personalities were so different that they kind of played off of each other, and to me that was interesting. I think this comic has potential, and I will read the second one, and whether I read the third one or not, I don't know.
I mean, it picked up a little bit when a familiar character showed up, but that was pretty much the peak of this issue. So,
yeah, but we kind of disagree on that one. I thought it was pretty enjoyable.
Okay, so next up,
one I know you enjoyed, also a Marvel comic.
I've been wanting to get into Star Wars comics for a while now. If you walk into Comic Book World, it's pretty much the first thing you see. You walk in, look to the right, and there's a whole shelf of Star Wars comic books, and if you haven't read any of them, it's kind of intimidating, so you don't know where to start from.
Yeah, you asked me a couple weeks ago what would be a good jumping on point. So as soon as I saw there was a #1 coming out, that's a good place to jump.
Well, this is Star Wars: The High Republic #1. So for those of you who do not know your Star Wars timelines, they actually provide you with a convenient timeline right here on the first page. So right here you have the fall of the Jedi, which is covered in, the prequel movies, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and then the Clone Wars. So then, down here you have the reign of the Empire, which is what's covered in Solo, A Star Wars Story, and the upcoming animated show, The Bad Batch. So then you've got the Age of Rebellion down there below it. So then, way up here, before all of that, you have the High Republic, which is pretty much the Republic and the Jedi Order at the height of its power. So that is where this story takes place. So in this issue, we follow a young Padawan who is about to undergo her trials to become a Jedi. And she is placed in a remote planet on the Outer Rim, and she is given a task to complete to move forward in her training, but then, stuff happens.
Of course it does.
Right. So we see how she responds to these new circumstances in the middle of her training. And I thought it was pretty great. I'm always saying that, there are other stories in the Star Wars universe beyond, the Skywalkers and the Solos. And, that's part of what makes The Mandalorian so great. And I thought that's what makes this one good, because, we don't have any of those characters yet. There is a bit of a cameo appearance from a familiar character who was around at that time. You can, work that out for yourself. And the rest, we don't know who they are, or at least I don't. So it was refreshing to see all these new characters in the Star Wars universe introduced.
I thought the main character's personality was very well fleshed out
Mm-hmm.
and was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the artwork was okay, it was adequate.
Yeah. So looking forward to next issue of that one.
All right, and our last comic is the only non-Marvel or DC comic we had. And it's also the only comic we bought that wasn't a number one.
Yep.
This is crossover number 3. Now, it was covered by Todd McFarlane, cardboard stock, $3.99. If you're not reading crossover, you need to take another look, because it's a very unique storyline. It's a real world where all of a sudden all these comic characters just appear in this little town. And it's how, as you can imagine, that's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking giant characters, normal sized characters, mixing in with all these townspeople. And then the main character is a comic book geek.
Right.
Who works in a comic book shop.
And, since the superheroes showed up, and, they, I forgot which town it was, which city it was maybe Philadelphia?
I don't know.
But anyways, the city was mostly destroyed in all the carnage when all the superheroes and comic book characters were plopped into this one location and started duking it out. So now, the general masses believe that comic books are the devil.
There's a preacher character in here who you can imagine.
Comic book stores have mostly closed. The few that are still open have protesters outside their doors every day saying, your children are going to hell for, reading this hell that we have brought upon us, or something like that.
And the name crossover is because they mention characters from other companies. Like in the first issue, I think it was Superman.
Mm-hmm.
This issue, the very last page, you see a guy I haven't seen in a long time. But I find that to be absolutely fascinating. It reminds me of Who Killed Roger Rabbit, where anybody can pop into it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I take a little bit of issue with this story, no pun intended, because the characters they mention and the ones that they kind of tease and hint at are DC and Marvel characters, and this is an Image comic, so it's highly unlikely we're actually going to see these characters, no matter how many times they tease them. So that frustrates me a little bit for this story. And I'm going to spoil a little something for you here. Spawn is not in this issue, so imagine my disappointment when I got to the end and he wasn't there.
That seems to be the way they do in a lot of variant covers. I mean, the artist they hire to do a cover for a comic seems to just draw whatever he wants to.
Yeah. So there were, if you read a comic book before, you know that there are these pages where at the bottom right of the page there's a character who does something like, and like, oh my god,
And you can't see what they're looking at.
yeah, and you have to flip the page to see what they're looking at. Well, two different instances in this issue that happens, and like, okay, here's Spawn. Spawn's about to show up. Nope, not Spawn. So gotta say I was a bit disappointed about that. So it's a very interesting take on superhero comics, but those are my general frustrations about the story.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The artwork is excellent and is extremely well written. So I enjoy it.
So overall, I'd say I have my top 3 right here in this bunch.
What's that?
Well, you got number 1 right here, number 2, and number 3.
Well, I'd have to go with my number 1 and 2, but I think my number 3 would be the Future State Wonder Woman. Which
Okay.
surprised me. I've never been that big of a Wonder Woman fan.
So here are our top recommendations if you value our opinions on comic books, which I hope you do.
It's our top recommendations, even if you don't value our opinions.
Yep. All right, so that does it for this week, and hopefully we'll have a new video for you next week, and also a new episode of Back Issues.
If you're not watching Back Issues, what's wrong with you?
Right?
Come on,
So
give it a look.
Subscribe to our channel and give us a like, and also we'd like to hear your opinions on the issues that have come out this week. Do you guys like these? Do you like something else? Do you want to recommend something to us? Let us know.
It's basically, we told you what we like. Fight me.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right, so we'll see you guys next week.
Jody, you're dead meat.
Excelsior.
True believers, you're obviously not reading nearly enough comic books.